Right, so here we are. I never thought it would come to this, but so I'm stepping away. I'm moving on from my RMX, but first of all, I want to talk about how this all started and how me being so deep into RC drifting sort of came to be. And it all started about 2021. I think it was about January, February, March, April, sort of March, April time, 2021. Just watching YouTube videos, and I caught the Hoonigan special on Super G, and I was just blown away. These things look really, really cool. Now, I've been like a car nut for for years. Even when I was a little kid, I used to love going down to Run to the Sun in Newquay and seeing all of the Beatles and stuff parked out on display. I used to go to hot rod shows with my uncle, and I've always been fascinated. Every time my dad got a new car, I wanted to know all about it, and it was only natural that I ended up getting into doing something in the motor vehicle sort of region of work, and I ended up painting car bodies, and actually own a small business repairing and painting cars, and I've been doing that for the past, I don't know, nearly 20 years, just over. And I've been into all sorts of cars, and I've got a love for all different types of brands, and most recently, thanks to getting an MX-5, I got into rear-wheel drive and sort of Jap culture. I love the stuff. So fast forward, I was watching Hoonigan, and their special with Super G popped up, and I was like, these things are so cool, and I went down the rabbit hole straight away. I was just watching as many videos on these things as you could. Now, prior to that, I'd sort of started to dabble with maybe like the 1/24th scale models and modifying them, because I saw a couple of videos on people had like heavily modified these, so they looked like the all the cool cars in like the German like VW scene, all like slammed, like sick wheels. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, I'd love to do that. Nearly chopped my finger off, and the Mark 1 Golf that I bought got kind of shelved. I still haven't finished it, and I was too eager. I didn't even have a cutting mat, and that kind of got put to one side. And then a few years later, I came across these videos, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. These things are so cool. So I'm just there watching video after video. Like, this is just amazing. I love it. Like the scale lights, the way the cars move, just everything was just so amazing. And my partner was like, I recognise that sound. And I was like, yeah, these are like RC drift cars. They're like really cool. And she was like, yeah, I know. I was like, how do you know about this? And turns out my partner's late husband, he was actually into RC cars and had an RC drift car. And she was like, up in his room, that's like now my office, there's one there. And I was like, yeah, I noticed there was a car there. And there's a couple. You can see there's the this thing up there, which I've never touched. It's always been sat there. And this S15. And she was like, why don't you like dig it out and have a play with it? I'm sure, like, he'd love it if that stuff just wasn't there, just not being used. And without going into too much detail, Sam passed in a road traffic accident some years ago, and obviously left my partner and our two oldest, her two boys at the time, distraught. And when I sort of came along and we both began to heal each other through all the stuff that we've both been through, I've been through my own journey, I ended up putting myself in a situation where I'm like the steward of his stuff that has been left behind, so I can kind of preserve and look after the stuff that he was into, so I can show and explain his hobbies to our older boys as they get older. Sam had actually dabbled in various YouTube channels, and he'd done an unboxing for his HPI Sprint 2 and done a bunch of videos of like learning to drift. Obviously the HPI is four-wheel drive, and that's what I started with. And obviously the Sprint 2 doesn't look like this. This is the body that Sam painted, the last one that he sort of painted before he passed, and I didn't want to wreck it, so I took it out a few times. Once I worked out sort of what it was, at the time I didn't know what brand of RC car it was, didn't know anything about them, I didn't know how any of it all worked, so I had to work out like a battery, because there was no batteries in it. I had to work out what battery it was, how it all worked, get it all up and running, check it all over, and just started downstairs in our underground parking, just taking it for a spin and just kind of getting to grips to it. I soon realised that I really didn't want to damage his shell, given the fact that, you know, this was one that he painted himself, and I wanted to preserve it and show it to like his boys as they got older. So I bought myself like a cheap, already painted body from eBay. It's been used for nitro. It's got a hole in the side where it's all burnt away, and it's got a heat shield there to try and stop the body from melting. Already had like holes for the body posts, but that was fine. It's like absolutely bruised and battered. I like, as you can see, we've now got a Scale Dynasty livery on there, and this is the first one that I ever used. And you can see in my earliest videos, this is the body. Now I started off using Sam's Sprint 2, and I think I did what everyone does, and straight away I was like, oh well, four-wheel drive, it needs to be rear-wheel drive. So I just ripped out the front axles, realised that wasn't going to work because the lock was terrible. I didn't even know about gyros, so I started heavily researching, and turns out Sam's was already set up as like a counter steer with like a lock diff and like different gearing to make the rear wheels spin faster, to give like the impression of the rear end snapping out and drifting, and I had lots of fun with that. But I can't leave things alone, and when I go down the rabbit hole, I go deep. And it wasn't long before I started researching in how I could make the chassis rear-wheel drive, and decided that I would build my own one from scratch. So yeah, I started hoarding parts, and eventually I started my first YouTube videos on how I was converting this one and the upgrades that I was doing and then eventually building my my Sprint 2 rear-wheel drive racing chassis. And I was obsessed with this. It just looks so cool with all the orange aluminium, and I put like a high motor mount on there. I had like a gyro on it by this point, an Oniseki gyro. I upgraded the servo to the Oniseki servo, which still to this day I think as a basic servo is really, really good. I've now got a Rev D RSST, and that's great because you can change all like the map and get it running exactly how you want it to. But I still feel out of the box the Oniseki is a faster gyro. I love it. I do love my RST more, but there we go. So I built this thing. Still with, I used the electrics that was in Sam's. His Speed Passion 3.0 10.5 ton motor, and his Turnigy Trackstar Turbo 80 amp ESC, and that's what I've been using for the past couple of years. And to be honest, for like a budget ESC and like a really old style competition motor, I think I've managed to do pretty well. But I got this all set up. I spent probably the best part of 6 months, or what feels like an eternity, building this body. I got this body from, imported it from Japan. It's an ABC hobby SIL 80. Put the SRC wide arches on there with my adjustable offset DS Racing alloys, and I was like, this thing is the tits. This sat on my Sprint 2. I'm like, this is brilliant. I'm kind of getting the hang of it. I'm thinking this is really great, and I'm looking for local tracks, and there just isn't anything. Lockdown hits, and I'm just sliding in my bath in the sliding around in the car park underneath, and that's it. So I start realizing that there are no local tracks and there was nowhere to take this thing, and I didn't want to butcher it outside. I took it down to my workshop and started taping out tracks on the workshop floor, and I was going through tires like nobody's business, but I was starting to get the hang of like getting around the track and looping things up. And everyone's telling me by this point, I'm on all of the Facebook pages I can find, and I've got people saying, oh, you're never going to get the Sprint 2 to drive nicely. And I'm thinking, I've got it driving nicely. This is lovely. You know, other people that have got Sprint 2s are saying, yeah, they're definitely a great chassis. And I started hearing, you know, people saying that it was never going to be able to compete, never going to keep up with other people at a proper track. And I needed to be on a smooth surface. And that just wasn't possible for me. And then as lockdown kind of eased, and the nearest track to me, Slide Effects, over in Timsbury, just outside Bath, and they opened back up again, and I was absolutely chomping at the bit to get up there. Now Timsbury is about an hour and 45 minutes away from me, and I'd got my car all ready to go, set up there. It was looking great. I got there nervous, met some new people, sat down and sorted my car out, put it down on the track, and it wouldn't even move. It was like that low to the ground that I literally couldn't even get over the carpet. And I had like a wild realization that everything that I'd done was just completely all over the place. So with the help of the people there, I sort of raised the chassis up to get more clearance and tried to sort of, I could just about get around there, but the gearing was all out, the turbo settings was all out, and no matter what I did, I just could not keep up with everyone else. And I went to the session maybe 3 or 4 times, and it was really hit and miss. I swear I had like 1 or 2 days where I really thought that the Sprint 2 was doing well, and I thought it was, you know, it was me getting better as a driver, and I was like, okay, I'm getting this. It's hard, but I'm getting it. And once I've been there a couple of times and people saw that I was sort of serious and I was really trying to get there, you know, people started letting me have a go on their chassis, and I was like, the difference is incredible. And that's when I came to the realization that I needed to start again. The main problem with the Sprint 2 is there's just so much play in the front end. You can't have your gyro game turned up any more than, say, 30-40%, and any more than that and you just get horrific wheel wobble on the front end. So because of that, it just became very, very difficult to drive. I still have faith that with the right tuning and the right parts, you could make that a really drivable chassis. And I've got a lot more knowledge behind me now. But when it comes down to it, the amount of money that you'd have to put into, and the amount of money that I did put into that chassis, I could have spent that on a rear-wheel drive, fit for purpose drift chassis and have been way better off. So as a side note, anyone out there who's looking to get into RC drifting, just go straight for the kill. The higher the budget you can go, great. But even the most basic drift specific chassis will get you where you need to go. And that's exactly where I started off when I got my MST RMX 2.0 Classic. Now, the 2.0 Classic is like bone stock. You don't get any adjustability, no turnbuckles. There's no bearings in the steering rack. They use like brass bushes instead, and it comes in at a little over 100 quid. But even that chassis was night and day amazing compared to my Sprint 2 for maybe a quarter of the price. So I sold all of the spares that I could and raised as much money as I could, and I bought this chassis and I started again. And that's when I started my build series on my YouTube to really document everything. And I learned a hell of a lot. To start off with, the box settings are fantastic, really, really good. You don't even have to mess with anything too much. And there's so much information and support of people that are using that chassis that, you know, you don't even have to have a club to be able to get where you need to go to you know, actually have fun doing it. So I started going to Timsbury every month because it was an hour and 45 minutes. You know, I'm a family man. It was difficult for me to go any sort of more than just once a month. And but I was loving it. I met some great people, and one of the people I met was my friend Dave White. Now, Dave is the person who probably lives the closest to me, and a couple of months back, maybe 6 months ago, it seemed like maybe Slide Effects was going to have to close. And what happened was that the people downstairs in the unit that they were renting were moving out, and they were unsure whether the landlord was going to have to ask them to move out, or they were going to have to work out how they were going to take over the entire building. In the end, they did manage to take over the entire building. They've now moved the pits downstairs, given more room upstairs, converted the track from carpet to plastic tile, and the place is amazing. It looks fantastic, and I've yet to get up there. And the reason why is because me and Dave, in the midst of all this worry of what was going to happen with what had become our local club, decided that we'd start our own club and our own track right on our doorstep. And that's when me and Dave got together and we started East Devon RC Drift Club and created Masakari Circuit. Now we've been going for maybe 4 months, and we've had a bunch of sessions, including a great Christmas party session where we had all kinds of fun and games, prizes, and we're looking forward to the new year with a fresh start. And with that fresh start, I've decided to step away from the RMX. I'm actually going to be giving my RMX to the club to use as a hire car. And so what am I moving on to? I mean, that is the big question, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to leave myself without a chassis. I'm going to need something to drive. After all, we've just started our own club. We've just started our own track. And hopefully over 2024, it's all going to go from strength to strength. So after a series of amazing events and helping people out along the way, I've managed to do what I've wanted to do for a very long time. And I've managed to pick myself up the Rev D RDX. And as well as the Rev D RDX, I've managed to secure myself all of the electrics that I need to build a separate chassis. And I cannot wait for this next chapter to begin. So thank you very much everyone that's got involved so far. I can't believe I've got the amount of followers that I have. I mean, a little over 1,200 on YouTube, nearly 1,400 on TikTok, and I didn't even think I was going to have 14. But thanks to everything so far, I've met some amazing people. Strangers have become friends, and we've got our own track, and it's amazing. And I can't wait to see what 2024 brings. So thank you very much, everyone. Keep it sideways, and I'll see you all soon.